Sanitation in the garden in fall is very important. It can really help in doing a number of things. You should really have 3 goals this time of year in sanitation. One is reducing anything that would be disease causing, that would be having disease spores carrying over till next year. And a lot of times we see this in tomatoes, we see cucumbers, zucchini, pumpkins, anything like that. You know, we have to really target trying to keep the diseases from carrying over. Another thing is we need to try to limit how many insects and eggs that might overwinter. And so, you know, getting rid of that debris can also help with that. The other thing that we have to look at is reducing the number of weeds. And so this is the prime time of year to start really thinking about next year and how we can reduce these things. Over to the right on the pictures, you know, the top one is cucumbers. Cucumbers are looking really bad right now, and a lot of it has to do with disease. Second picture is squash bugs. They're notorious for overwintering. And then on the bottom is my strawberry patch. I'm starting to get all sorts of weeds coming up in it. And so, you know, it's time to take care of those. So first off, I want to talk about the landscape. It's time, you know, especially as we approach the dormant season and we start to get a couple freezes, it's time to start removing the dead or diseased foliage. Some plants will benefit in being cut back to 2 to 3 inches tall. You don't want to cut down into the crown, you want to stay above it. Other perennials such as mums, they benefit in the tops being left on. So that's where you need to start doing your research and figure out what needs to be cut back and what doesn't. Anything that is too tall and too lanky, you know, you want to tidy that up. Any diseased leaves, pull them off or cut them back. And, you know, just removing the dead stems. I know we all like to leave those seeds for the yellow canaries and the house finches, but after those birds are done with them, go ahead and get them gone. The other thing that you can do in the home landscape is some minor pruning. You know, when you want to delay any major pruning, but you know, anything that you see that's small and broken, or the twigs that might be rubbing together, or, you know, any minor thing like that can be taken care of. But like I said, any major pruning you want to delay until we're into that dormant season. I know I've seen a lot of people with loads of mulch right now.
I would caution them from doing too much mulching because it will keep the ground way too warm. And so delay any mulching until we have had 3 good frosts,
so that the plants won't respond to warm soil. And then, of course, remove any fallen leaves that's going to impact lawns. You want to remove any fallen leaves that's going to impact any of the flowers. You know, some leaves in the flower beds are okay for, you know, insulation and mulch, but you don't want to have inches upon inches of mulch. On the vegetable garden, before frost, it's time to clean up any fallen fruit or any diseased plant material. On the right, I have a picture of a couple of my tomatoes. They've been hit hard with early blight and they're not looking so hot. I plan to get those out this week and not wait till a frost. And a lot of it's because I want that disease out of there. The more it stays there, the more it's dropping disease spores onto that soil. So I want it out of there. This time of year, our gardens are really starting to look pretty shabby. And so you can do a lot of cleanup before frost and after frost. So after frost, you want to dispose or destroy any diseased or infected plants, such as tomatoes, green beans, squash. If they look like they've got a disease, like it has spots, or the plants were stunted, or they just weren't looking right, get rid of them. Don't compost them. Don't toss them down in the ditch. Get rid of them and get them off the property, because you don't want that stuff sitting around to drop spores for next spring. The other thing that you can do with anything that's not diseased and it looks fine, you can till that in, or it can be deeply spaded into the soil. The other thing that you can do is compost it. Remember, on composting, you need a good balance between browns and greens. And with fall fast approaching, you'll have plenty of browns. And so you can have a good mixture for a timely breakdown on that compost bin. Remember to remove those weeds. And I went out and took pictures of my garden yesterday, and this is one weedy patch. And I just let it go. I shouldn't have, but some of those weeds are starting to get seed heads. So if you can't remove the weeds, at least get rid of the seed heads. Get them bagged up, get them out of here, dispose of them. And don't compost them. Get them gone. That's one thing, that there's a couple plants out there that if you let them go to seed, that's 1 million seeds for next year's a seed bank in your garden. You don't want that. So remove the weeds. If you can't remove them, at least get rid of the blooms and the seed heads. Remove any cages, trellises, panels, stakes, anything that's hardwire or hardscaping. And you might consider disinfesting it. And a lot of that has to do just with using a 10% bleach solution and spraying things down. I have several gardeners that like to take bleach solutions and even do their tomato cages. I know it sounds a little ridiculous, but it might cut back on some of those disease spores that are sitting there ready to infect next spring. And then remove anything that any of the insects can overwinter, or they overwinter under things, in things. You know, I know several gardeners that like to compost their squash and their squash plants. Well, that is a good way to ensure that you're going to have squash bugs next year, because you're providing them a place to go and get out of the weather. And you're also providing the food, because they will continue to feed on zucchini, winter squash, anything in that cucurbit family that you've tried to compost or you've tried to just pitch down towards maybe one of the ditches. That provides them a way to overwinter. And then next year you will have an infestation early and with lots of them. So, you know, that's what I really promote, is trying to get anything out of that garden that they can overwinter in. In the home orchard, you want to pick up any fallen or spoiled fruit, any apples, any peaches, any pears, you know, get all that gone. Remove any of the dead mummies that are hanging on the trees or fall to the ground. These two things go a long way into preventing that disease from being severe the next year. Start removing any of the canes that are dead in your blackberry or raspberries. And those are usually the canes that produced this year. So anything that produced this year, you need to be removing. Then once again, on some of the trees, you can do minor pruning. On some of the fruit bushes, you can do minor pruning. Nothing major, just minor. And that's just, you know, broken, rubbing against, branches going the wrong way, the minor pruning. And finally, fall cleanup tips on tools. Put your hoses up, disconnect them from the hydrants, and freeze-proof any water sources. Wash, dry, and oil all your tools once you're done with them. And that way they don't rust. And that includes all of them: shovels, trowels, rakes, hose, pruners, anything like that. And then once again, those stakes and wires, and just get them all put up for the season.